My name is Eleanor Mitchell and I just turned 75 years old. Instead of blowing out candles surrounded by my children and grandchildren, I sat alone at Antonio's Italian restaurant watching a single candle flicker on my complimentary dessert. Meanwhile, my family was lounging on a Bahamian beach, enjoying the sunset from a luxury resort, all paid for with my retirement savings. The betrayal stung worse than the time I broke my arm falling off a ladder. Little did they know that lonely dinner would be the catalyst for a decision they never saw coming. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from, and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of reclaiming my life. I never expected to be a widow at 68. Frank and I had big plans for our golden years, traveling to national parks in the RV we'd saved up for, spending winters in Arizona, and making memories with our grandchildren. Cancer had other ideas. After 46 years of marriage, I found myself alone in our 3-bedroom ranch house on Maple Street, the one we'd paid off 15 years ago through careful budgeting and Frank's overtime at the manufacturing plant. I'm not wealthy by any means, but Frank and I were always careful with money. He worked at Westbrook Manufacturing for 35 years, while I taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. We saved diligently, lived within our means, and managed to put aside a comfortable nest egg, just over $400,000 in retirement accounts, plus the house and Frank's life insurance payout of $200,000. Nothing extravagant, but enough to ensure I wouldn't be a burden to our children in my old age. Our oldest, Matthew, followed his father's practical nature but none of his humility. At 52, he's a financial advisor at Riverside Investments with an imposing Tudor-style home in the affluent part of town. His wife Kimberly has expensive tastes, designer handbags, seasonal wardrobe refreshes, and a standing appointment at the salon every Thursday. They have 2 children in college, Brittany at an expensive private university, and Andrew at state school on a partial scholarship. Mom, the financial world is complicated, Matthew would tell me whenever I questioned an investment suggestion. Just trust me. That's what I do for a living. What he never mentioned was the commission he earned from moving my money around. Rebecca, my 50-year-old daughter, presents herself as the caring one. She calls regularly to check on me, brings her family over for Sunday dinners twice a month, and remembers my birthday without fail, or at least she did until this year. Her husband Derek works in pharmaceutical sales, traveling frequently while Rebecca manages their household and their 2 teenagers, Emma and Tommy. Tommy, my 15-year-old grandson, is the spitting image of Frank, right down to the cowlick that won't stay flat no matter how much product you put in it. You do so much for us, Mom, Rebecca would say while accepting my offer to pay for the grandkids' summer camps or their orthodontic work not covered by insurance. We'll take care of you when the time comes, I promise. Then there's Jason, my baby at 45. Single, charming, and perpetually in financial trouble. He's bounced between careers, real estate agent, restaurant manager, car salesman, never quite finding his footing. Every few months brings a new crisis. Car repairs, rent increases, or investment opportunities that need immediate cash. This is the one, Mom, he'd insist, eyes bright with enthusiasm. I'll pay you back double once it takes off. The repayments never materialized, but his requests certainly did. Over the years, I've helped them all. $20,000 toward Matthew and Kimberly's down payment. $35,000 for Brittany's college. $15,000 to help Rebecca and Derek when Derek lost his job during company restructuring. Countless smaller loans to Jason that we both knew were gifts. I never minded. What else was the money for if not to help my children? Frank would have done the same. 6 months ago, I had a health scare. Nothing serious in the end, just high blood pressure and a warning from Dr. Peterson about stress and cholesterol. But it got me thinking about my remaining years and how I wanted to spend them. I started dreaming again about those travel plans Frank and I had made, wondering if I might still enjoy them on my own or perhaps with a senior tour group. I mentioned this to Matthew during one of his rare visits. You should enjoy your retirement, Mom, he said, though his eyes flicked to his phone as he spoke. But travel can be expensive and risky at your age. Let's focus on keeping your finances stable. As my 75th birthday approached, I felt a renewed desire to celebrate properly. 3/4 of a century seemed significant, a milestone worth marking with family around me. I dropped hints during Rebecca's Sunday dinner in early June. Big birthday coming up next month, I said as I passed the mashed potatoes. 75 feels like it deserves something special. Of course, Mom, Rebecca replied, exchanging a quick glance with Derek. We'll definitely do something. I took their vague responses as confirmation they were planning a surprise, perhaps the family gathering I'd been hoping for. How wrong I was. I discovered their plans entirely by accident 3 weeks before my birthday. I'd stopped by Rebecca's house on a Tuesday afternoon to drop off a casserole dish she'd left at my place after Sunday dinner. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me years ago, a courtesy we'd always extended to each other. The house seemed empty as I called out, Rebecca? It's Mom. No answer. I placed the dish on the kitchen counter and was about to leave when I heard Rebecca's voice from the backyard patio. Through the French doors, I could see her pacing with her phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly. The beach house is gorgeous, Kimberly. 6 bedrooms, direct ocean access, even a private pool. We'll have plenty of room for everyone. Yes, I've already put down the deposit. Don't worry about that. Mom's money from the Henderson Street property investment covered it. I froze. The Henderson Street property was a small rental house Frank and I had purchased as part of our retirement plan. I'd sold it after Frank died and invested the proceeds, nearly $80,000, on Matthew's advice. I hadn't authorized any withdrawals for beach house rentals. She has no idea, Rebecca continued laughing. She thinks we're planning something for her birthday, but we'll be long gone by then. Jason's already booked his flight. I know, but he'd make our lives miserable if we left him out, and Mom would eventually find out. Look, we deserve this vacation after everything we've been through this year. I stepped back from the door, heart pounding.
Sureli ide misunderstood.
They wouldn't plan a vacation deliberately over my birthday. They wouldn't use my money without asking. There had to be an explanation. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I got up and opened my laptop. The one Jason had set up for me last Christmas, insisting I needed to join the 21st century. I logged into my bank account, something I rarely did since Matthew handled most of my finances. What I saw made my stomach drop. A series of withdrawals over the past 3 months. $15,000 from my main savings account, $20,000 from the Henderson Street Investment Fund, another $10,000 from my checking account just last week. Nearly $50,000 gone, with transfer descriptions like portfolio reallocation and investment opportunity. My hands shook as I reached for the phone. I called Rebecca first, even though it was the middle of the night. Mom, she answered groggily. What's wrong? Are you okay? Rebecca, I need to ask you something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you planning a vacation to a beach house? Silence. Then, how did you? Mom, were you snooping around my house today? Her immediate accusation rather than denial told me everything I needed to know. I overheard your conversation with Kimberly, I admitted. Rebecca, what's going on? Why are you using my money for a family vacation without even telling me? And during my birthday? Mom, you're blowing this way out of proportion, she sighed, fully awake now. Yes, we're planning a family trip, but it's not like we're stealing from you. That money was just sitting there, and Matthew said it made financial sense to use some of the returns from your investments. We were going to tell you, but we knew you'd make a big deal about your birthday and make us feel guilty. Make you feel guilty? I repeated, stunned by her callousness. Rebecca, I'm your mother. I'll be 75. Did it occur to you that I might want to celebrate that milestone with my family? We'll celebrate when we get back, she said dismissively. You can have a birthday anytime. The kids have summer activities starting in August, and this was the only time that worked for everyone. I need to go back to sleep, Mom. We can talk about this tomorrow. She hung up before I could respond. The next morning I called Matthew. Surely my financially responsible son would be appalled by this misuse of my funds. Mom, you're getting confused again, he said condescendingly. Those withdrawals were completely legitimate portfolio adjustments I made to maximize your returns. As for the vacation, we've all been under a lot of stress and frankly we could use the break. I don't see why you're making such a fuss. Matthew, it's $50,000. And you planned it deliberately during my 75th birthday. It's not 50,000, he corrected. It's $45,000, and technically it's not your money in the sense you're thinking. It's family money, money Dad left for all of us to benefit from. We're just using it for a family purpose. Without the entire family, I pointed out. Without me. Let's be practical, Mom. You wouldn't enjoy it. All that travel, the heat, the stairs in these rental places. We're looking out for you by not subjecting you to that. His patronizing tone was so infuriating I had to end the call before saying something I'd regret. Jason was my last hope. My youngest had always been the most emotionally sensitive of my children, despite his financial irresponsibility. I didn't know they were taking that much money, he admitted when I reached him. I thought it was just the usual family vacation budget. But Mom, they've been planning this for months, and everyone's really looking forward to it. Rebecca would kill me if I backed out now. What about my birthday, Jason? Did you all forget? Or just decide it wasn't important? His hesitation told me everything. We were going to FaceTime you from the beach. I got you a really nice present you can open while we watch. A virtual birthday celebration. An afterthought. As the days passed, I discovered more evidence of how systematic their exploitation had become. Credit card statements showed purchases at high-end stores authorized as additional cardholder, a status I never approved. Investment statements revealed a pattern of withdrawals conveniently timed with Brittany's tuition due dates, and the renovation of Matthew and Kimberly's master bathroom. For years, I'd been their personal ATM without even realizing it. As my birthday approached, I kept hoping for some sign that my children had reconsidered. Perhaps they'd changed their travel dates or planned something special before leaving. I dropped increasingly obvious hints during phone calls. I was thinking about reserving a table at Antonio's for my birthday next week. I told Rebecca 4 days before they were scheduled to depart. Would Tuesday or Wednesday work better for your family? Oh, Mom, she said, sounding distracted. I could hear her typing on a keyboard in the background. We'll be gone by then, remember? But we'll do something nice when we get back, I promise. Maybe in August when things settle down. Right? I said, my throat tight. I forgot. The weekend before my birthday, they all gathered at Rebecca's for what I later realized was a pre-vacation party. I wasn't invited. I only found out about it when Tommy called asking if I could bring over the blue serving platter I'd bought Rebecca for Christmas. Grandma, everyone's here, he exclaimed when I arrived with the platter. Even Uncle Jason. Mom's making her special sangria. I stood in Rebecca's crowded kitchen, the serving platter clutched in my hands, watching my family laugh and joke about their upcoming trip. Kimberly was showing off her new swimsuit while Matthew discussed snorkeling spots with Derek. Rebecca was checking a packing list while Jason entertained the younger grandchildren with stories about swimming with dolphins. Mom! Rebecca looked up, surprise and something like guilt flashing across her face. We didn't expect you. Tommy called, I explained, setting down the platter. He said you needed this. An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. Matthew cleared his throat and handed me a glass of sangria as if that would smooth over the awkwardness. Join us for a bit, he offered magnanimously. We're just finalizing some vacation details. I stayed for exactly 30 minutes, listening to their excited chatter about excursions and restaurants, about the white sand beaches and clear blue waters. Not one of them mentioned my upcoming birthday or expressed any regret about their timing. When I left, only Tommy hugged me goodbye. The next day, I scrolled through Facebook to see photos already appearing. Airport selfies with captions like, Bahamas bound, and family adventure time. Rebecca had posted a group shot of everyone with their luggage, the caption reading, so grateful for this time together. We all needed this break. I checked my phone repeatedly for birthday wishes, but only received a perfunctory text from Matthew the morning of their departure. Taking off soon. Signal might be spotty. Happy early birthday, Mom. Enjoy your day. That was it. 75 years on this earth, raising 3 children as best I could, and all I merited was a hurried text message. With my family gone, I decided I would still celebrate my birthday even if I had to do it alone. I made a reservation at Antonio's Italian restaurant, Frank's and my favorite place for special occasions. We'd celebrated our 40th anniversary there, just 2 years before his diagnosis. The day of my birthday dawned bright and clear. I spent the morning reading cards from a few old colleagues and friends, including a lovely handwritten note from Linda Peterson, my former principal at Lincoln Elementary. My neighbor Martha brought over a small potted orchid with a pink bow. I dressed carefully that evening in a navy blue dress I'd bought years ago for a wedding, applying makeup with extra care, and even putting on the pearl earrings Frank had given me for our 30th anniversary. In the mirror, I hardly recognized the determined woman staring back at me. There was a dignity in her eyes I hadn't noticed before, a quiet strength behind the new wrinkles. As I drove to the restaurant, I passed the community center where Frank and I used to attend dance classes. The marquee read Senior Social Night, Thursdays 6 to 9 p.m. I made a mental note, then pushed it aside. One step at a time. Antonio's hadn't changed much over the years. The same dark wood paneling lined the walls, the same soft Italian music played in the background, and the delicious smell of garlic and tomato sauce enveloped me as I stepped inside. The hostess, a young woman with a kind smile, greeted me warmly. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, for one. Eleanor Mitchell." A flicker of sympathy crossed her face as she checked her book. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell. Right this way." She led me to a small table near the window, far from the large family gatherings in the center of the restaurant. I appreciated the gesture. Watching other families celebrate would have been too painful. "Your server will be with you shortly," she said, placing a menu in front of me. "Thank you," I replied, unfolding my napkin and arranging it on my lap with deliberate precision. My hands trembled slightly, and I clasped them together on the table to still them. A middle-aged waitress with Nancy on her name tag approached my table. "Good evening, ma'am. Can I start you with something to drink?" "A glass of the house red wine, please." Frank and I always shared a bottle on special occasions. Tonight, a single glass would have to do. As Nancy left to get my drink, I glanced around at the other diners. 2 tables away, a large family, grandparents, parents, and children, were celebrating what appeared to be an anniversary. The elderly couple at the head of the table held hands across the tablecloth, their weathered faces glowing with happiness as their family toasted them. Frank should have been here with me. We should have been that couple. Nancy returned with my wine. "Are you ready to order? Or do you need a few more minutes?" "I'm ready," I said, having already decided on Frank's favorite, the chicken parmesan. "And it's my birthday today." I don't know why I shared that information. Perhaps I wanted anyone to acknowledge the day. Nancy's expression softened. "Happy birthday. A special one." 75, I admitted. "That's wonderful. Are you expecting anyone to join you?" I shook my head. "No, it's just me tonight." Nancy hesitated, then gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Well, we're glad you chose to spend it with us. I'll put in your order right away." While waiting for my food, I checked my phone again. A few more birthday wishes had trickled in. A text from my doctor's office, automatically generated. An email from my insurance company offering a birthday discount on additional coverage. And a voicemail from my hairdresser Doris, singing an off-key rendition of Happy Birthday. Nothing from my children or grandchildren, except for the photos continuing to appear on Facebook. Rebecca had posted pictures of their first day at the resort. My grandchildren splashing in crystal blue waters, Matthew and Derek at the pool bar with fruity cocktails, Kimberly lounging on a cabana with designer sunglasses. The caption read, "Day 1 in paradise. So blessed to experience this with my amazing family." The irony of amazing family wasn't lost on me. My chicken parmesan arrived, the portion too large for one person. Frank would have helped me finish it, stealing the extra crispy edges he knew I didn't care for while I nabbed bites of his tiramisu for dessert. We had our routine, built over decades of shared meals and inside jokes. As I ate in silence, the sound of singing drew my attention. The restaurant staff approached the anniversary couple's table with a cake blazing with candles, singing the traditional birthday song while the family clapped and cheered. The elderly woman blushed with pleasure as her husband kissed her cheek. I looked down at my plate, blinking rapidly to dispel the tears threatening to spill. A few minutes later, Nancy returned to my table, followed by 3 other servers. To my shock, they carried a small cannoli with a single candle flickering in the center. "Happy birthday to you," they began singing. and suddenly all eyes in the restaurant were on me. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and unexpected emotion as they finished the song. The other diners applauded politely, and the family at the anniversary table raised their glasses in my direction. "Make a wish," Nancy encouraged as I stared at the solitary flame. "What do you wish for at 75 when you're sitting alone at a table for one?" I closed my eyes and blew out the candle, wishing not for material things or even for my family to return, but for the strength to value myself as much as I'd valued them. "Thank you," I whispered to Nancy when the others had gone. "That was very kind. Everyone deserves to be celebrated on their birthday," she replied simply. As I was finishing my cannoli, a server approached with a glass of champagne. "Compliments of the couple celebrating their anniversary," he explained, gesturing to the elderly pair who smiled and nodded at me. I raised my glass in thanks, and the woman motioned me over. Hesitantly, I gathered my purse and made my way to their table. "No one should drink birthday champagne alone," the woman said, introducing herself as Dorothy. "Frank and I are celebrating 50 years today." "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "That's quite an achievement." "Family is everything," Frank Sr. said, beaming at his assembled children and grandchildren. "Greatest blessing in life." I nodded, unable to contradict him but feeling the painful irony of his words. Dorothy must have read something in my expression. She patted my hand. "Not all family is blood, dear. Sometimes it's who shows up when it matters." I returned to my table with those words echoing in my mind. Looking around the restaurant, I realized I wasn't really alone. Nancy checked on me throughout the meal with genuine care. The couple had shared their celebration with a stranger. Even the busboy had wished me happy birthday as he refilled my water glass. I paid my bill, leaving Nancy a generous tip, and drove home through the quiet streets of the town where I'd spent most of my adult life. The house was dark when I arrived, no one waiting to ask about my evening or help me out of my coat. But for the first time, the emptiness didn't feel like abandonment. Felt like possibility. Back home, I kicked off my shoes and sat in Frank's old recliner, the one I could never bring myself to get rid of after he passed. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from Frank's parents, still keeping perfect time after all these years. I opened my laptop to check my email before bed. More birthday wishes from distant acquaintances, and a coupon from my favorite bakery. But what caught my eye was a new album Rebecca had posted to Facebook, Beach House Bliss Day 2. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it would hurt, but I clicked anyway. The photos showed my family enjoying every luxury a Caribbean vacation could offer. My grandchildren jet skiing across turquoise waters. Matthew and Derek deep sea fishing on a chartered boat. Rebecca and Kimberly getting massages on the beach. Jason parasailing above the crystal clear ocean. But it was the caption under a photo of their beachfront accommodations that broke me. Upgraded to the premium villa with private pool and butler service. Living our best life. #blessed #family first. Upgraded. With my money. While I ate alone on my 75th birthday, I scrolled further and found a photo of all of them at an upscale restaurant, champagne glasses raised. The timestamp showed it was taken exactly when I'd been sitting by myself at Antonio's, listening to strangers sing me happy birthday. The phone rang, startling me. It was nearly 11 at night, too late for casual calls. The screen showed Tommy's name. Grandma. His voice sounded small and distant with the international connection. "Happy birthday. I was waiting until Mom went to bed to call you. She took my phone earlier because she said I was spending too much time on it instead of being present on vacation." Tears filled my eyes at the sound of his voice. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot to me. I'm sorry we're not there with you. I told Mom we should have waited until after your birthday, but she said the booking couldn't be changed because of the deposit." "It's all right, Tommy. I had a nice dinner at Antonio's." "By yourself?" The dismay in his voice was evident even through the patchy connection. "The restaurant staff sang to me," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "And a nice couple celebrating their anniversary sent over champagne." "That's good, I guess." He paused. "Grandma, can I tell you something? I feel bad about it." "You can tell me anything, Tommy. You know that." "I overheard Mom and Uncle Matthew talking about the money for this trip. Uncle Matthew said something about moving funds from your accounts before you changed your mind about the arrangement. Mom seemed worried, but he told her it was all legal because you signed some papers. My blood ran cold. What papers, Tommy? I don't know exactly, but they mentioned something about power of attorney? And Uncle Matthew said now that it was set up, they could manage things more efficiently. Power of attorney. I vaguely remembered signing papers in Matthew's office months ago, after my health scare. He'd presented it as a precautionary measure, ensuring someone could handle my affairs if I became incapacitated. Uncle Matthew said they deserve to start enjoying their inheritance now since they're the ones dealing with… Tommy's voice dropped to a whisper. He said, dealing with Mom in her declining years.
I'm sorry, Grandma.
It didn't sound right to me. My declining years. I was 75, not 95. I lived independently, drove my own car, volunteered at the library twice a week, and hadn't asked any of them for help beyond the occasional ride when my car was in the shop. Grandma? Are you still there? I realized I'd been silent too long. Yes, Tommy. Thank you for telling me. You did the right thing. You're not mad at me for eavesdropping?
No, sweetheart.
Never. I love you very much. I love you too, Grandma. I gotta go now. Mom's coming upstairs. I'll try to call again tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat motionless in the dim living room. The revelation should have devastated me, but instead, I felt a strange calm descend. The pieces finally fit together, the systematic withdrawals, the dismissive attitudes, the convenient forgetting of my milestone birthday. They weren't just taking advantage of my generosity. They were deliberately cutting me out of my own life, treating me as if I were already gone, just a source of funds to fuel their lifestyle. I walked to the hallway mirror and stared at my reflection. Gray hair, yes. Wrinkles, certainly. But my eyes were clear and sharp. My mind was sound. I wasn't ready to be packed away and forgotten. Enough, I whispered to my reflection. Then louder. Enough. The sound of my voice in the empty house was startling, but also empowering. Frank had always said I was too soft-hearted for my own good, too willing to put everyone else's needs before my own. He'd be disappointed to see how I'd allowed our children to treat me. I returned to the living room and opened my laptop again. This time I didn't look at social media. Instead, I navigated to my bank's website and downloaded every statement from the past year. Then I found the folder where I kept important documents and located the power of attorney papers Matthew had me sign. The language was complex legal jargon, but the implications were clear enough. I had signed over significant control of my finances to Matthew, with Rebecca as secondary agent. The document had been written to take effect immediately, not upon incapacitation as Matthew had claimed. Next, I pulled out my will, the one Matthew had updated for me last year. Reading it carefully for the first time, I realized it heavily favored Matthew's family, with specific provisions directing my assets to Brittany and Andrew's education before general distribution. There were also codicils allowing for early distribution of certain assets for family benefit during my lifetime. They hadn't just been stealing from me. They'd created a legal framework to justify it. I stayed up until 3 a.m, reviewing documents, making notes, and formulating a plan. By the time I finally went to bed, exhaustion had replaced shock, and resolve had replaced hurt. Tomorrow would be the first day of my new life, a life where Eleanor Mitchell finally put herself first. I began the next morning with a phone call to Gerald Winters, a financial advisor I'd met through my library volunteer work. Gerald was near retirement himself and had always struck me as straightforward and ethical, qualities I now realized were sorely lacking in my son's professional conduct. "Eleanor, this is highly irregular," Gerald said after I explained the situation and showed him the documents I'd gathered. "The power of attorney your son established gives him significant control, but there are clear fiduciary responsibilities he's violating by using your funds this way. Can it be revoked?" I asked. "Absolutely. Power of attorney can be revoked at any time, as long as you're mentally competent. Which, if I may say, you clearly are." He tapped his pen against the desk. "But Eleanor, I have to ask, are you prepared for the family fallout? This won't be easy." I thought about my lonely birthday dinner, about Tommy's worried voice, About the photos of my family living luxuriously on my savings while excluding me from their lives. I'm ready, I said firmly. What do we do first? Over the next 2 days, Gerald helped me establish new accounts at a different bank, secure my remaining assets, and begin the process of revoking the power of attorney. He also referred me to Patricia Wong, an attorney specializing in elder law. Patricia's office was warm and inviting, her manner both professional and compassionate. Unfortunately, what you're describing is not uncommon, she told me after reviewing my situation. Family financial exploitation of seniors is on the rise, even among families with no prior history of abuse. I never thought my children would do something like this, I admitted. I keep wondering where I went wrong in raising them. You didn't go wrong, Eleanor, Patricia said firmly. Adults make their own choices. Your children chose to prioritize their desires over your well-being. That reflects on them, not on you. With Patricia's help, I revoked the power of attorney, created a new will with appropriate protections, and established a trust to ensure my assets would be properly managed according to my wishes. She also helped me file formal fraud complaints regarding the unauthorized withdrawals. What about the money they've already taken? I asked. We can pursue recovery, but it may get messy, Patricia warned. Are you prepared to potentially take your children to court? The thought made my stomach clench, but I nodded. I need to establish boundaries. This can't continue. While securing my finances was my first priority, I realized I needed more than legal protections. I needed a life of my own. One that didn't revolve around my children and their needs. The day after meeting with Patricia, I visited the community center I'd passed on my birthday. A cheerful woman named Grace Turner greeted me at the front desk. First-time visitor? She asked, her silver bob swinging as she looked up from her computer. Yes, I admitted. I saw your sign about senior social night and thought I'd get some information. You're in luck. I run that program, Grace said, coming around the desk. She was about my age, dressed in bright colors with an energy that was immediately appealing. We have social nights, day trips, fitness classes, and volunteer opportunities. Are you interested in anything specific? Everything. I found myself saying. I'm interested in everything. Grace laughed delightedly. That's the spirit. Here's our calendar for the month. The book club meets tomorrow at 10 if you'd like to start there. We're discussing Louise Penny's latest. I love Louise Penny, I said, surprised to find something in common so quickly. Then you'll fit right in. I'm Grace, by the way. Eleanor, I replied, shaking her offered hand. Well, Eleanor, the best advice I got after my Harold passed was to try one new thing every week. Been following that advice for 7 years now. She winked. Just got back from a senior group tour to the Grand Canyon. Always wanted to see it, so I did. I've always wanted to see the Grand Canyon too, I admitted, thinking of the travel plans Frank and I had never fulfilled. They're running another tour in September, Grace mentioned casually. Just saying. I left the community center with a calendar full of activities, a flyer for the Grand Canyon tour, and my first genuine smile in weeks. Back at home, I began another project, learning to better use technology. I'd relied on my children, particularly Jason, to handle anything computer-related, which I now realized had given them too much access and control. I signed up for a computer class at the local library and spent hours watching tutorials online. I learned how to set up secure passwords, monitor my accounts, use video calling platforms, and navigate social media without leaving myself vulnerable. It was challenging and occasionally frustrating, but each new skill felt like another step toward independence. By the end of the week, I had secured my finances, revoked the legal documents that had given my children control, joined 3 community center programs, signed up for the Grand Canyon tour, and gained enough technology skills to protect my online presence. There was one more thing I needed to do before my family returned. I called a travel agent and booked a 2-week trip to Italy, a dream destination Frank and I had saved for but never visited. The trip would begin the day after my family was scheduled to return from the Bahamas. I paid for it using the new credit card Gerald had helped me set up, one that only I could access. Finally, I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote 3 letters, one to each of my children. I explained what I had discovered, the actions I had taken, and the boundaries I was establishing moving forward. I was firm but not vindictive, clear but not cruel. I ended each letter the same way. I will always be your mother, and I will always love you. But I am also Eleanor Mitchell, a woman with her own life to live and her own dreams to fulfill. I hope one day we can rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. But until then, I will be taking care of myself. Something I should have done long ago. With love and hope for the future. Mom. I sealed the letters and placed them on the mantel. Then I began packing for Italy. My family returned from their Bahamian vacation tanned, relaxed, and utterly unprepared for what awaited them. I wasn't there to witness their initial reactions to my letters and the changed financial situation, as I was already on a flight to Rome when they came looking for me. According to my neighbor Martha, who watched it all unfold, Matthew arrived at my house first, storming up the driveway in his luxury SUV and pounding on my front door for nearly 10 minutes before using his key, which no longer worked thanks to the new locks I'd installed. Rebecca and Derek showed up next. Then Jason, all of them conferring on my front lawn with increasing agitation. Finally, Rebecca called Martha, who calmly informed her that I was out of the country and had asked her to water my plants while I was away. Eleanor went where? Martha later told me Rebecca had practically screeched into the phone. Italy, Martha had replied simply. 2-week tour. She was very excited about it. My phone began buzzing with messages almost immediately. I had a new international plan. Another change I'd made independently, but I chose not to respond right away. For once, my children could wait for my attention rather than the other way around. Instead, I immersed myself in the beauty of Italy. I wandered the ancient streets of Rome, gazed in awe at Michelangelo's ceiling in the Sistine Chapel, and tossed a coin into the Trevi Fountain, wishing not for romance but for continued courage. I made friends with other travelers in my tour group, Margaret from Seattle, a retired librarian with a wicked sense of humor, Carlos and Diane from Florida, celebrating their retirement with a year of international travel, and Robert, a widower from Chicago who took stunning photographs of our group against the backdrop of Italian splendor. You seem different today, Robert commented as we shared a table at a small cafe in Florence during our second week. More relaxed. I realized he was right. The constant checking of my phone had stopped. The guilt about enjoying myself had faded. I was fully present in this beautiful country, appreciating each moment without worry about what my family might need or think. I've decided to forgive them, I explained, stirring my cappuccino. Not for their sake but for mine. I don't want to carry anger through the second act of my life. Robert nodded thoughtfully. That's wisdom, Eleanor. It took me years after Sharon died to forgive myself for all the trips we postponed, all the somedays that never came. Frank and I were the same way, I admitted. Always saving, always preparing for a future that looked very different from how things turned out. Well, you're here now, Robert said, raising his cup in a toast. To second chances and new beginnings. To second chances, I echoed, feeling lighter than I had in years. When I finally returned home, tanned and rejuvenated from my Italian adventure, I was ready for the confrontation that inevitably awaited. I'd arranged for Grace from the community center to pick me up from the airport, sparing myself the tension of asking family for a ride. Want me to come in with you? Grace asked as she pulled into my driveway. I can play the part of intimidating friend if needed. I laughed. I appreciate that, but this is something I need to handle alone. Call me afterward, she insisted. The Tuesday bridge group will want all the details. I'd barely set my suitcase down when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole I could see Matthew, his expression set in the stern look he reserved for when he thought someone was being financially irresponsible. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Hello, Matthew. I assume you got my letter. Mom, what the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded, trying to step inside. I stood firmly in place. I'd appreciate it if you called before visiting in the future, I said calmly. And please watch your language. Called before, he sputtered, his face reddening. You've frozen all the accounts. You've locked us out of everything. Do you have any idea of the financial mess you've created? I've created? I raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting perspective. Would you like to discuss the $50,000 that disappeared from my accounts to fund your Bahamas vacation? Or perhaps the unauthorized credit card charges? Or maybe the power of attorney you misrepresented to me? Those were legitimate family expenses, he insisted, though his eyes shifted away from mine. And that power of attorney was for your protection. It was for your convenience, I corrected. And those family expenses were theft, Matthew. I've filed formal complaints. His face paled. You what? Mom, you can't be serious. I'm your son. Yes, you are. And I raised you better than this. I gestured to the porch swing. Would you like to sit down so we can discuss this civilly? Or would you prefer to continue yelling on my front porch where the neighbors can hear? That got through to him. Image conscious as ever, Matthew glanced around and reluctantly took a seat on the swing. Over the next 2 hours, I had similar conversations with Rebecca and Jason, who arrived separately as word spread among them. Rebecca oscillated between tears and accusations, while Jason attempted to charm me into believing he'd been an unwilling participant in their scheme. I remained firm with all of them. I explained that I had secured my assets, revoked their legal access to my accounts, and established clear boundaries for our relationship moving forward. I made it clear that I was prepared to pursue legal action regarding the misappropriated funds, but would prefer to establish a repayment plan instead. This isn't fair, Rebecca protested. We've been taking care of you for years. Have you? I asked quietly. Or have I been taking care of all of you? There's a difference between visiting your mother for Sunday dinner and actually supporting her. I haven't asked any of you for help since your father died. Not once. That silenced her momentarily. What about the grandkids' college funds? Matthew asked, getting to what clearly concerned him most. And Brittany's graduation trip we promised her? Your children are your financial responsibility, I said firmly. Not mine. I love my grandchildren dearly and will continue to be part of their lives. But from now on, any gifts will come from my choice, not your expectation. By the end of the day, I was emotionally exhausted but standing my ground. None of them were happy with me, but they'd begun to realize I wasn't going to back down. Matthew, ever the pragmatist, was the first to suggest a repayment plan for the misappropriated funds. Rebecca continued to insist I was overreacting but agreed to respect my new boundaries. Jason, surprisingly, was the most sincerely apologetic, admitting he'd known it was wrong all along. I should have stood up to them, he said before leaving. I'm sorry, Mom. Really? The following weeks brought a major adjustment for all of us. There were difficult moments. Rebecca excluded me from Emma's dance recital. Matthew consulted another attorney to see if he could challenge the revocation of the power of attorney. He couldn't. And there were several tense family gatherings where little was said. But there were positive changes too. Tommy began visiting me regularly without his parents, eager to hear about Italy and see my photos. Jason stopped asking for money and instead offered to help with household tasks, seeming to genuinely want to rebuild our relationship. And gradually, as they realized I wasn't going to give in, a new respect began to develop. Meanwhile, my own life blossomed in unexpected ways. The book club at the community center became a weekly highlight. I joined a walking group that explored different neighborhoods every Saturday. I took a watercolor class and discovered a latent talent that delighted me. Grace introduced me to her circle of friends, active, engaged women who had built fulfilling lives beyond their family roles. With them, I went to concerts, tried new restaurants, volunteered at the animal shelter, and even attended a pottery workshop where I created the most lopsided mug ever made, which I still use proudly every morning. Robert from the Italy tour and I stayed in touch, exchanging emails about books and travel. When he mentioned he was coming to my area for a photography exhibition, I invited him to dinner. That dinner led to another, and then to regular video calls, and eventually to a friendship that held the promise of perhaps becoming something more. My 76th birthday approached faster than I could believe. This time I made my own plans. I reserved a private room at Antonio's and sent invitations to my new friends, a few old colleagues, my neighbors, and yes, my family, including my children and grandchildren. I didn't expect all of them to come. Rebecca and Matthew still harbored resentment over the financial changes, though they had both begun making regular repayments as agreed. But I extended the invitation anyway, making it clear that they were welcome but not required. The evening of my 76th birthday, I arrived at Antonio's to find the private room already filling with guests. Grace and her husband were arranging birthday decorations. My walking group friends were setting up a slideshow of our adventures over the past year. Robert had flown in from Chicago, his camera already capturing candid moments of the gathering crowd. And there, somewhat awkwardly standing near the gift table, were Tommy and Emma with Jason. A few minutes later, Rebecca and Derek arrived, followed shortly by Matthew without Kimberly. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. Nancy, my server from the previous year, was working again and recognized me immediately. "Look at you now," she exclaimed, gesturing to the room full of people. "What a difference a year makes." As I looked around at the mixture of old and new relationships, at the life I had built for myself when I finally decided to put myself first, I realized she was right. The journey from my lonely 75th birthday to this joyful 76th celebration hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary and ultimately rewarding. When it came time for the birthday toast, Grace clinked her glass for attention. "To Eleanor," she said, raising her champagne, "who showed us all that it's never too late to begin again, to stand up for yourself, and to create the life you deserve." The room echoed with "To Eleanor" as glasses were raised. Even my children joined in, Tommy with particular enthusiasm. Later, as I was cutting the cake, Tommy sidled up beside me. "I'm proud of you, Grandma," he said quietly. "Mom says you've gotten stubborn in your old age, but I think you've gotten brave." Out of the mouths of babes. As I look to the years ahead, I don't know exactly what they'll bring. Perhaps more travel with my community center friends. Perhaps a deeper relationship with Robert. Certainly more watercolor painting, which brings me unexpected joy. Hopefully continued healing with my children as we establish healthier patterns. What I do know is that I'll face those years on my own terms, valuing myself as much as I value others, and remembering that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and create the life you deserve. If my story resonates with you, I hope it gives you the courage to make whatever changes you need in your own life. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with loved ones? How did you find the strength to put yourself first? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of life's second acts. Remember, the most beautiful chapters of your life may still be waiting to be written. Thank you for joining me on this journey,